It's okay to make a request of someone. You could request anything you want. You could request that somebody, please stop asking me. You could do that. You can ask them, and then they either will give you your request and stop asking, or they won't, right? But that's just a request. That's not a boundary. That's simply, I'm making a request which may or may not get fulfilled. You really have to have that idea going in. Whenever you make a request of someone, there's a chance it'll be fulfilled. There's a chance it won't. And they get to choose that. You don't get to choose that. And as harsh as this may sound, you're not entitled to have your requests fulfilled. Even if they're important to you, you're still not entitled to them. You're entitled to make the request, though. That is a right that you have. You have the right to make any request you want, but you don't have an entitlement that the other person gives it to you, right? So that's separate from a boundary. A boundary, first of all, what people think it is again, putting a limit on the behavior. I'm setting a boundary now. I've allowed you to ask me 3 times for this thing. I've said no 3 times. Okay, now it's a boundary. You can't ask me anymore, right? People do my favorite example case is, you can disagree with me, but you can't raise your voice to me. That's a boundary. I don't want to be yelled at. So you can disagree with me, can't raise your voice to me. That's my boundary. That's not a boundary, though. That's the thing. That is not a boundary. Anything that requires someone else to comply is not a boundary, because they cannot comply, right? They could either refuse to comply, or they could say that they're going to comply, but then not, right? People do that all the time, right? So sure, I won't ask you again. Then they ask you again, right? Again, still their choice. Still their choice. You might have a preference, but still their choice. So you can't put a boundary on something that you have no control over. And you don't have any control over the thoughts or statements or requests or actions of other people, right? You don't have control over that. Only they have control over that. But you have total control over what you do, over what you say, over what you do, over how you handle something, over how you react, over what you say yes and no to. You have control over that. So that's where the boundary setting lies. The boundary is not, this is the weirdest thing about a boundary. Boundaries are not actually limits on other people. They're limits that you are placing on you. But they're good limits. They're limits that take care of you. So what a boundary is rather than a limit that you place on someone else's behavior, it's a limit you place on your own by deciding what you will and will not do. It's not about what someone else can and cannot do. It's about what you will and will not do.